We see you.
And everyone sees us.
Yay! Hooray for everyone.
I'm making sure things go off without a hitch here.
How are you, Heidi? Haven't seen you in ages.
I know. I think it's hilarious how Nick sent me earlier a message. Oh, that'll give us enough time for tech issues and whatnot. And I'm so
Of course.
confident. I'm like, nothing will happen.
Of course.
Oh, but Nick's been a genius at sorting out tech issues this week because he sorted me out earlier on this week when I'd made a rather rubbish recording, and he nailed it within minutes. Excellent.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Hey, Nick. Are you going to be the new techie here with ChatGPT and the AIs and everything?
I'm already that guy amongst our social circles. Have you heard of this thing?
Probably. I think I'm a little dark tonight.
Just a little bit.
Or you're just your general demeanor. It's going to be a long night. Just look yourselves in for the ride.
Oh, look at there. In German, we say, and God said there will be light, but he couldn't find the switch.
Oh.
All right.
Okay.
Is the volume good, or should I put the thingies on?
Put them on. Let's see what it sounds like.
Okay.
We're all wearing headphones here, so you're part of the club.
Good company. I'm trying that. I downloaded the Adobe. What was it? The Adobe thing that makes your eyes always look in the same direction. It is genius. It's excellent.
What is excellent?
So,
that's better.
Yeah, if you look at me now, I'm looking straight down the camera, and I'm not. I'm reading my notes, but you can't tell because this piece of software makes it look like you're looking straight down the camera.
Oh, you got the.
Is that the stuff you used the other day, Nick?
Yes. So hang on. I gotta turn mine on. We'll just stare blankly at the camera.
Thank you, Alexandria, for letting us know that the sound is good.
I don't know, Barry, if it's just because I spend every week talking to you, but I can tell that it's happening, and I suspected it before you had even said something. And I didn't want to say anything. Yeah,
it's one of these things. I think for the other podcast, I think it will be really useful. For this, I think it's just going to look really weird. Because of the interaction that we have. So.
Well, I think if you're in like a professional setting and you're just supposed to be on the call and you're just supposed to be staring at it, yeah, cool. But like when you have interaction going, it's really weird why your eyes aren't moving.
Well, it's the fact he catches blinks and stuff, which I think is now that's just weird.
Oh, and I'm doing the glitchy thing again. That's so cool.
Yeah, see, on my other laptop, it just won't do it. It's my other laptop doesn't have the beat for it. But this is it. Better.
Oh, I did that on purpose.
Okay, that's good. Not that we sound to panic.
It's so weird because it thinks the camera's up there somewhere. Oh yeah, hey, did you see that? Look at my eye.
Yeah, it's whereas I'm just like. It is quite.
Okay, hold on. So this is me. Hang on. Tell me if there's a difference here, because this is me looking at the camera itself. Hold on. There we go. That's me looking at the camera, and that's with the AI. And then hang on. Let me turn off the AI. This is so unnatural. And then okay, this is me without the AI looking at the camera. If it wants to go, I don't know if it's gonna go. Hold on.
I was gonna say it's stalled.
Oh, yeah, I've got my hand over my mouth. Clear. Look at how talented I am. I'm a ventriloquist. I can throw my voice through my hand. Isn't that so cool?
Your microphone is just something else. It's a bit special.
Okay, and then here's me looking at the camera without the AI. It's a different angle, right?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's weird that it thinks it's up there. It looks like I'm looking at something above. So, when I actually do look at the camera, I could just stare.
I was going to say, because it's got no real way of knowing what your setup is.
It doesn't, but it should still know where the camera's coming from. Right?
Let me do that.
I'm up close and personal tonight.
There we go.
Oh, is it going to be that close the whole time?
Huh?
Is it going to be that close the whole time?
Yes. I think it's very important that people can see me that close from now on.
All right, Barry, you know what to do.
All right. There we go.
Going in.
All right, there we go.
That's just what everybody needs to see. But just that. And then we don't have to worry about AI at all.
You got your haircut. You look all snazzy.
Oh, I did.
Or is that AI too?
Oh yeah, no, the AI cut my hair.
Oh.
It looks really good. Looks really
Thanks.
good.
Yeah,
You look podcasty video prepped tonight.
Yeah, well, here's the thing is that, unless I have something going on, I don't really care too much. It'd be funny to go back and do like week by week and see how my hair grows every week. Since that'd be kind of a cool experiment.
Oh, I just realized
for like, wasn't there like a thing on Instagram where you took a picture of yourself for like a year straight and then it put it into like that montage and you could see your face changing?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think there was something like that. I got my hair done too. Thanks for not commenting.
Looks great.
Thank you. I was just fishing for a compliment.
Okay. Looks awesome, Heidi. I like the way what they've done with the ends as well. That's just brilliant.
Oh, that's a good night.
The crew is back.
My new light isn't working, and I think that's because it's battery powered enough to plug it. Oops.
I purposely bought a new light for this to put behind the computer so it doesn't have to come straight like so strong. But it doesn't look it looks like there's a spotlight on me.
I did that as well, and I've forgotten to charge it, and it's not working. I wonder if I've got a cable to make magic happen. Don't laugh, that wasn't funny.
No, I'm laughing about something else.
All right. Okay.
No, I got a little surprise for y'all in a little bit here.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah. Oh, there we go. Oh, it does direct. Does that make any difference at all?
I'm not looking.
It looks the same.
That's not the answer, Heidi. That's not the answer.
It looks perfect.
Yes, I see. Yes, there's a little bit more lighting there.
I can see a nuance in Lux.
Thank you. That's more what we're looking for. Well done. Research Matters on Twitch was very much enjoying our supreme close-ups.
Yes, I saw that.
Well done. I'm pleased we could be of service.
Where's? I have errant audio coming through. Oh, there it is. Okay, got it. All right. Hey, the story tonight: culture
Very
and
interesting.
HCI. Yeah, super cool topic. Oops. Yeah. So hey, just everyone on the stream. Hey, check the notes. Barry, I noticed you made a comment on one of the it came froms. Heidi, are you good on the it came froms, by the way?
Yeah.
You have all your answers? Okay.
No, I need to. Well, yeah, but I need to go
All right.
in. our document.
Take a look at those. Put them in there. Barry, I noticed it's not a wrong answer. I just want to make sure that you're talking about the same thing because on the last one, it's talking in relation to an interview.
When you say last one, you mean the first one?
No. When I say the last one, I mean the last one. The whiteboarding. That's during an interview. I just want to make sure that you're not giving out bad advice.
Oh.
I was using it to say, well, I mean, you're entitled to your own opinion, man. If we disagree on this, we disagree.
I'm pleased I'm allowed my own. I didn't realize that I would. Yeah, it helps if you read the entire question. Contest interview.
Oh no!
I think if they did that, but used it appropriately, I think I'd still be down with it.
Okay, interesting.
Nick,
All right.
I had to sign in with a different account because Restream wasn't allowing me in, so you have to give me access to the document.
Sure thing.
With my Hotmail account. Sorry. And yes, I just dated myself. I have a Hotmail account.
Oh, I also have a Hotmail account. That's okay.
I'm never gonna give it up.
I had my Hotmail account was my username was 4 letters, 5 letters. It was that old. It was so
Barry at Hotmail.
But even that my my Twitter handle is Baz_K. Can you guess what my Hotmail account was?
Oh, are you giving that out right now? Jeez.
Oh, it doesn't exist
anymore.
It
doesn't exist anymore, right?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
That it still existed. No.
5 letters?
It existed somewhere, but...
Heidi, can you put your email in chat for me so I can just grab it?
Sure. 5 letters, Barry?
Yeah, BAZ_K at hotmail.com. That was my first ever email. I'd like to think I've grown up since then, but that wouldn't be true.
What was my first Hotmail account?
Gotcha.
Oh my god, it was South Park. I was a huge South Park fan.
Oh, fair enough. Weren't we all?
All right, got you.
Thank you. Look at
okay.
there, I can access now.
Oh, right. Sorry. I keep going back and forth between doing a little surprise for y'all. Cuz I just think it would be so fun if this works. Y'all ready to have some fun?
Yeah, let's see if I can get in.
Okay. Okay.
All right.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Can you also, just for funsies, can you also give this account access? Because now I don't know why I can't get in.
You're just trying to show off with all the email addresses, aren't you?
Yeah, one for every domain she owns. Let's see here.
Yeah.
We can't make
That's a
that
joke.
public, Nick. We can't make that public, Nick.
No, we're not going to make any of the names public.
No. Nick has become privy to one of my obsessions.
Collecting domains.
Right.
It's like General Grievous over there with all her domains.
Look at my power.
Any chance I get to throw a Star Wars reference out there, I'm going to do it.
Is that a Star Wars
Yeah.
reference?
Yeah, General Grievous. This will make a nice addition to my collection. He's got all the lightsabers. I'm just thinking of the lightsabers are like your domains.
Oh, very nice analogy.
Completely lost
See
on me.
here. I know. I feel like
I should.
if any of my people are watching, please tell me. Please tell me you got that joke.
I have. I'm very sure I have watched like all of them, nearly all of them. I think a lot of the newer ones I haven't, but then part of me also now thinks that because everyone said you should watch them, you must watch them. Then I sort of do that whole thing around. I don't like being told what to do, therefore I don't. In fact, I've left jobs for less. These bosses trying to say that I need to do things that they tell me to do.
Yes, comment in chat, Alex. Yes, I have seen Saberforge. I've not been to Saberforge, but I follow them.
What's
Saberforge is a local a local to like Pacific Northwest. They're pretty close to me actually. And they make lightsaber hilts and blades too.
Cool,
which is pretty cool. Yeah. Where's the? What am I looking for? I'm looking for the.
I had my one more thing sorted out early today, and I've forgotten what it was.
Oh, this is why we write stuff down.
I was in the middle of an event, and yeah, I couldn't. So what was I doing? How did I get there? I was doing that this morning. Oh no! In fact, no. We talked about it earlier. It's Oh, there's two I was going to go for. So,
what now?
God. I just, I said I had a surprise for y'all, right?
Right.
Okay. Well,
he says with a sense of boding and.
Okay. So look, we talk a lot on the show, right? What is the one thing that we always keep coming back to? It's the tagline of the show at the very end. We say,
yeah, it depends.
It depends.
Well, hey, this episode brought to you.
Oh, for crying out loud. This is why I didn't like to play with. This is why I didn't like to play with boys when I was younger.
I realized I dropped the ball on that. I probably should have put some drop shadows on it to make it pop a little bit.
It should have had more color and effects. Stretched it. You should have stretched it. Okay.
Well, now that we're all in a lively mood, I always thought that. Sorry, this is. Never mind. I'm not going to say that because that would bury me. That would bury me. But I'll say it in chat here so that you two can see it and react to it.
Okay.
Oh.
Oh. I don't know who's watching, so I can't say that.
You need to give me a warning on some of these.
I did. I said I'd type it in chat.
Oh.
Do you think I could just like hold my nose to the side so it doesn't look so crooked? Oh God, the first one is really harsh. It came from.
Yes, it is, but it equally, yeah.
Important too. I get it.
No, I'm all down with the victim blaming.
Yeah, of course.
It's clearly their fault. It's Well, I don't know. It's maybe not something everyone's done, but you do get some of them where you just sit there and go, that was really bad on all levels. But of course, me being, because clearly I don't do anything wrong ever. It's never my fault. I need some new fidget toys. I find I have to have stuff on the desk for when I'm doing this to have my hands doing something so that I can, I don't know, take attention away from what I'm doing. So I have like little things like this that I sort of take to bits and put back together again, which is just a camera shoe. But I think we should probably get some branded fidget toys.
Okay, so like, let me just tell you about some of the stuff that I have on my desk. So I have a utility knife, a blade.
Yeah, don't use that.
No, I do all the time, and it's just because it makes this noise that like distracts me. Anyway,
Okay.
and then I have a speed square or adjustable speed. Okay, and I have this one too, which is really bad for audio.
Yeah, okay.
Just have a bunch of tools on my desk.
Oh, I
have my newest ADHD tool.
Oh yeah, what is it? Oh, is that a fidget cube? What is that?
No, it's a task timer.
Oh.
To rip me out of my hyper focus.
So
you just put it like on the side of time you want, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 60 minutes, 30 minutes, and it starts counting down, and then it has a little alarm, and you go, okay, now I need to do something else.
That's cool. We've been learning a lot about ADHD and dyslexia and all them sort of things. Because my eldest daughter's been getting tested and stuff, and that's all good. But also how because it's all genetic, it all inherits, and the breadth of it and all this sort of stuff. And it's fascinating. It turns out that we think that because we suspected my wife had it, but then I've been looking through all the traits, and I was like, oh, I identify with and so clearly our children didn't have a chance because we think it's come down through both sides of the family. Yay!
And it also manifests so completely different between men and women, girls and boys. Girls tend to be the inattentive and the shy and the dreamer, who is like comes across as ditzy. What do you know? One of society's cliches, women are ditzy and clumsy and don't know how to do things. And so one of the most revelatory things that I found out about myself and ADHD was how there were some things that I just thought were Heidi things.
Mm-hmm.
And it turns out I share them with millions of people. And you just go, wait, what? and all of a sudden things are like, oh my God, why didn't nobody tell me this years ago? And it usually isn't like your life could have been better. It's more you probably could have managed it differently.
Well, what's been an interesting revelation for us is with my daughter, because we homeschool, and therefore that means we have unconsciously or possibly semi-consciously, but not for this reason, but we've really scoped the learning to fit the child, to fit, their motivations, their dream, that sort of stuff. It isn't just a one-size-fits-all schooling. And so then when because she's now 18 and she sort of hit this, it's been, people said, oh, how have you managed to live with this for so long and not understand? It's like, well, it's not a disease. It is something that it is just part of her. It's just part of you. It is, and therefore, because she hasn't had the constant people all the time saying, "Oh, you're a bit weird, you're odd because you've got ADHD, etc., etc." It's all just been part of her, and we've worked with it, and it's hence why she's been able to use, I think, the almost the powers it gives her. In terms of art and all that sort of stuff, to really focus on that stuff. It's been really interesting around, I guess, not too far from what we're talking about tonight in terms of culture and society and all that sort of stuff.
You know what's the thing that made me realize that I had it is I didn't know until I had read up about it or read some things. But one of the things was like, wait a minute, you mean that like neurotypical people can wash the dishes and clean if they want to? What the? Really? You could, like, I can want to do something
and then carry it out.
And to be able to carry it out is the problem.
I was more. I always find it fascinating, which is hilarious for how I interact also professionally. I am so impressed by people who can take notes during meetings and write succinct summaries after a call and then organize everything into categories. And I'm just always fascinated by it.
That's what I get AI to do for me now.
you can impress me so quickly with that.
But that's the. I mean, for me, I take notes during meetings, but they don't make it. I mean, you go to them afterwards; they don't really make any sense. They wouldn't make any sense to anybody else. Nobody else could, depict them because they're drawings. They're at angles. They're different bits on the page. For me, it's all about the fact that I've taken the note is the memory prompt about what I was thinking, why I was doing. It could be as simple as a couple of lines, literally a couple of lines drawn on the page, or a little squiggle, and it's whatever, rather than proper legible notes. Which is why I'm now trying out, because I would sort of waste so many notebooks. Which is now why I'm trying out the electronic notebook idea to see if that actually is better.
Is it better? Yeah. Do you have an update on that? Because you've had it for a while now. You've had it for a couple months.
I've had it now for a couple of months. So the writing, and actually what's quite cool is Amanda has just bought a mini iPad to do a similar thing. And because it's got a bit of a surface on it, it writes better than when I was trying them a couple of years ago. So you can rest your wrist on it and stuff and write. I still prefer the writing ability of mine. I think for me, it is just a bit too big. I thought the size of it would be. This sounds wrong. I thought the size of it would be more accommodating to what I wanted. That does sound. I can't get that to sound right. But I think the iPad mini size would be better, sort of more around the proper A5 size, whereas this is just it's wider and stuff. But I'm still. When I've got it, if I've got to make sure I put it on the desk beside me, so then I use it. Because if I don't, because by the time you switch it on and all that sort of stuff, it still falls under the I haven't got it there, for I won't use it. Like tonight, because I bought my bag in because I was in the office this morning and then I've been out this afternoon. I would normally have emptied my got it out of the bag, put it on the side, booted it up, and had it ready there to scribble. And I haven't done it, and I won't bother doing it now because I've got some bits of paper here I can scribble it and a pen handy. And the native app, I would love it. For me, the pinnacle would be is if it would integrate better with OneNote, and then because we use the Microsoft ecosystem, only it would do that, then I'd be a happy man. But because it runs off Android, I mean the native app, the Note app is good, but it's still it will save a PDF into OneNote, so it is kind of there. But I don't feel I'm getting the best out of it yet, and it wasn't cheap. It's still a good £300 or £400. But the battery life on it is amazing.
Good update.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think there's a lot to be said about. For me, I like to digitize everything. If I can, I'll take notes digitally because I'll search. I'll do and I throw everything up on my drive and I just do a search. Like, hey, we talked about this at some point, and I throw some keywords in there, and it's great at coming back with the things that I need. And yeah, it's a real, real benefit to have all that. Like, I can imagine. Like, there are some talks. Like, I have a talk right here that I'm not going to let you all see. It's on the other side of this, but but. I didn't digitize it and I lost it. And I was like, I had some really good concepts on there. And I lost it in the move. And I was digging around some of my stuff the other day and I found, I found it. And so the first thing I did was I digitized it entirely. So that way I can go back and reference it later.
The cool thing that the iPad mini's got, so Amanda's got the case for her thing, and the pen nicely slots in beside it in this case. Because that's the thing I've got. Sometimes I lose so I have to buy another pen. The pens aren't cheap. To make that work. If that was all better together, then that would make a significant difference, I think. But I can't tell Amanda that because that would mean that she's right at the moment, and that's admitting that sort of stuff is just not marriage, is it? So,
well, I don't really have a good segue from that. Are you guys both ready with the notes?
Yep, I'm good. I've got my one more thing.
My
Heidi,
one more
you're good to
thing
go?
is you might have to snap me and
All right.
wrap me up.
All right. We'll be
I got
sure to
fired
interject
up
if you start
about
monologuing again.
I got fired up about it.
All right, cool.
Everybody
All right,
should know about it.
I can't wait to see what it is. I'm not even looking at the show notes yet. All right, everyone watching the stream, we'll be back. We're going to take a quick little break, and then we'll be back with the show.
Welcome to Human Factors Cast, your weekly podcast for human factors, psychology, and design.
Ah, dang it. Hold on. The music. I was distracted by something else. This is still technically the pre-show. I was distracted by something else because the Discord channel that we have going up, it timed out literally right as we went, right as I hit the commercial. Anyway, let's just take a quick pause and then we'll go. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Human Factors Cast. This is episode 272. Nice palindromic quality to that number. We're recording this live on February 2nd, 2023. I'm your host, Nick Roome. I'm joined today by Mr. Barry Kirby.
Hello and good evening.
And we also have Heidi Mehrzad.
Hi.
Wow, I was very, very soft-spoken. I'm sure we'll get more strongly spoken towards the end of the show. But this week we have a talk show all about culture, cognition, human-computer interaction. We'll also be taking some questions from the community about how to get over bad interviews, specifically with users, alternate ways to think about usability methodology, and an update for how to use ChatGPT in human factors engineering, HCI, and UX. But first, we got some programming notes for you all. Just, really quick, I want you all to be aware of we have some, if you're interested in podcasting or working with human factors professionals, join the lab. I just want to say that at the top. Sometimes we bury it in a commercial down the line, but if you are interested in any of those things, want to help volunteer for the lab, we have a lot of stuff that we want to do behind the scenes. So please let us know if you're interested in any of that. Barry, and I was inspired by your little intro on the latest episode of 1202. You want to tell us about that?
So on 1202, we finally got the first interview down and it's out there. It wouldn't have been out there quite as well if Nick hadn't stepped in and sorted out the audio. So my very public thanks to you, Nick, for making the quality of that even better what it was. So I interviewed Stephen Shorrock, and Stephen Shorrock is one of these guys. He's an author, he's a lecturer, editor. He has many, many hats, but he basically gave us an overview of his career and give us a really candid reflection over some of the stories or some of the interactions that he's had throughout his career, and he gave us a real insight into his thoughts on where we've been as a practice and where he sees us going in the future. So I was really grateful for his time, and we've even decided to get some of the shorts out early for this one as well. So yeah, get yourself over to 1202podcast.com and have a listen or a watch of it on YouTube.
It was a great listen. I'm really happy with that episode. All right. Well, hey, we know why you're all here. You're here for the news, so let's get into it. That's right. This is the part of the show all about human factors news. Barry, what is the story this week?
So the story this week is all about culture, cognition, and human-computer interaction. So recently, UX Collective put out an article on the importance of considering culture in the design of technology. The article details that culture, as a set of beliefs, values, and practices, plays a significant role in shaping human behavior and cognition. It impacts our cognitive processes, emotions, attention, and perception, as well as our beliefs and values. The language we speak and the cultural background we have can influence the way we interact with technology and the way we perceive it. The concept of cultural affordances, where the cultural background of a user influences their perception and use of technology, is one of the most important ways in which culture influences design in HCI. Additionally, nonverbal cues such as gestures and body language, which can vary across cultures, can also affect the way that people interact with technology. It's important for human practice practitioners to take these cultural differences into account to design effective and user-friendly technology that can benefit a wider range of users. So Heidi, what are your thoughts on our ability to use culture in the way that we design our HCI?
Muted.
Well, they were
Rookie
great thoughts. Thanks very much.
mistake. Rookie mistake. Oh god. Okay. Anyway, I think it's a great topic, super interesting. That's it. Moving on. But I actually had to think about that for a second because I thought it was something more different than at first because I was like, well, it's a topic we already are aware of. And then read through it and then realized it is literally what we face also in medical device development and design, because when we design products we have to design them for different geographies, so we have to take into account different perceptions, different cultures, how they think, how they perceive things, right? One of the things that always stuck with me was when I was working on specific product that had was for the OR, and we had to put in a timeline of kind of the surgery and what steps you go through and whatnot. And there was a huge discussion amongst the team whether that should go vertical or horizontal because of how people perceive time, right? And it was then, to be honest, it was one of the first times when I was really confronted with the fact that yes, we do perceive differently. And I realized and learned that day that, for instance, Western cultures tend to think of time as a horizontal linear, and Asian cultures, actually Eastern, more Asian, or towards the south, um, look at it from vertical, right? So it was very interesting for me, one of those first things. So I think that was over a decade ago. So the cultural differences alone that shape a society every generation also moves on, right? So thinking of that, it's so many things, and it's a topic that I think we don't probably talk enough about because we just automatically adapt to every update, to every progress we make, right? Oh, this is a new technology, we got to adapt. So we learn and move on. Like the iPhone isn't new to us anymore, but if we think about it, it hasn't been around for an entire generation yet, right? So it's one of those things where I think it is so much more nuanced than we think it is, and it has so many more implications than we actually more commonly talk about. But on the other side, it also should be one of the main factors that you talk about when you design things. So it's there's a lot of things that come together, and there's funny little things we can think of examples, right? One of the things is that, like, if you're a Gen X or an older and you do little videos for Insta or Twitter or whatever, TikTok, as you can see, I'm super social savvy. You can see them like you can see them moving their hand away and like pausing because they actually need the visual reference that they're on. They're not used to talking to a video. And then when you look at millennials and Gen Zers after, they instantly start talking. So there's so much of behavior and culture and norms and beliefs that go into it that I think it should be one of the main things you think about when you actually start going into the design concept phase of things. That's kind of. What do you think, Nick? Is it too general? I mean, I
No, I think just my initial thoughts here are when I don't know, it just seems like one of those no dust stories to me. Yes, take culture into consideration when we design things, and that's very
Yeah.
reductive to think about it that way. And I'm really appreciative of pieces like this that detail just everything that goes into our concept of what culture is. Because I mean, if you look at this article, like they talk about all these different aspects, from diversity to the different cultural models, as well as sort of the design guidelines even used in some of these cultural dimensions. And it's a really good look at exactly what types of things we're looking at when it comes to designing for different cultures, or designing for multiple cultures to use something collectively. And I just think this is a great piece. So thank you everyone for picking the story. I'm really excited to talk about it tonight. Barry, what are your initial thoughts here?
Yeah, I think it is one of these things that it's almost of course we do that. We brilliant professionals, aren't we? So we do, but the reality is we don't. Or I don't think we, as you've alluded to, we don't do it in the way that we think we think we do it, but do we really? And that's where I think we need to explore tonight. Globalization has really now slapped this in our faces. The ability, like, for the internet, for the communications, really sort of shows, and you can see that through social media. The way that messaging happens through social media, you can see the differences in Western culture and Eastern culture. If you really analyze the language and what people do, it can give you gives you a real insight in a way that we've just never had before. For design specifically, I think when we're designing for different cultures, and I think this is particularly non-safety critical areas, because I think safety critical areas tend to coalesce around Western ideals. So an example I'll use is air traffic control. Air traffic control uses English as the basic language, and you have to use English all the way through. Isn't necessarily always, but that's the common norm. And so we tend to drift towards Western culture in that way. But when you're doing non-safety critical things, you need to design for different cultures in order to get success. But the thing I find really interesting is, at the moment, and I think we'll probably talk about it in more detail, culture, we largely based on geography. We sort of talked about a bit about that already, but I find the application of culture, particularly subculture, really interesting, because subculture, once you get there, it's almost opens up that massive can of worms, because there's so many different types of diverse subcultures that are either intersecting or diverging, and are completely not respective of don't respect geographic boundaries, or any other sort of boundaries at all. I find that absolutely fascinating. So yeah, I think that's great.
Yeah, so I don't know where we want to go with the discussion here. There's a lot of different ways in which we could tackle this. I think the thing that I maybe want to take a look at here first is just in the perception of these cultural differences in technology in general, right? I mean, how do different cultures view what is their perception of technology? Because when you look at that broad global scale, there's going to be different ideas of what technology is and isn't, depending on each of these cultures. I don't have a whole lot of good examples, but just at a high level. Then there's also sort of the mental models of each of those cultures, and how those mental models impact the way that we design those interfaces for those folks. And maybe, Heidi, you can bring up some of those examples that you were bringing up in medtech, as one of those things that like, how do mental models differ across cultures, right? And then sort of the third part of this high level question is the nonverbal cues, right? So how do they perceive it? What mental models do they have, and what nonverbal cues are impacting the use of that technology? So I don't know. I wanted to bring that up, opening up a can of worms here. Where do you guys want to go?
Well, that's
1, 2, 3.
I said just throw it out there. It's the fundamentally, the biggest example that I had that was thrown kind of in my face through the pandemic was around pulse oximeters. So the idea that we wanted to look at blood oxygen levels, and they were using infrared technologies to do that, because they had to generate. We didn't have enough oximeters to go around, so people were creating new technologies to be able to get quick readouts to understand what people's oxygen saturation rates were. So that was great. People coming up with all sorts of ideas. But then, and they tested them, fantastic, and then they were being used, and they just got rolled out quite strongly, almost ubiquitously. But then what they were finding is people with darker skin tones were dying at a higher rate than people with whiter skin. And it took a bit of time, but then they realized that this using the technology they were doing was actually, because they hadn't taken into account skin tone when they were designing it, that the readings they were getting were artificially higher than what they actually were. So people who they thought had a blood oxygen level of, say, 95%, 98%, actually had it around the 80s. And so weren't getting enough oxygen in the blood. And that was around. So basically, when they were designing this piece of technology, tested it on effectively white people and hadn't done any broader testing, rolled it out and hadn't taken into account that them physical differences in what was going on. So I thought that was something that really threw up this sort of how we deal with some of this almost straight away.
Yeah, and I mean, so that's a good example. Another good example would be sort of internationalizing a product. So if you think about anybody in big tech, right, that they have to have their software to be used in multiple different languages, and different languages have different rules. And so, like, one example of even just something so simple is in multiple countries other than the Western countries, they use the comma as a decimal point in numerical representation. And so, right there you have an example where we can't just put a dot there, because it's not going to be easily understood across everyone. You have to adapt the system for each of those languages, or create something that's universal. Heidi.
That reminds me of my first attempts to write checks in this country with a decimal, coming from growing up in Germany, where we do use the decimal very differently, and then realizing I was writing checks for quite the sums over here. But
Nice.
Jeez.
So how did you feel when you were doing that? How was that pointed out to you what you were doing? Was it like at the bank, or at the what
did you find out the hard way?
Yeah. Because presumably somebody pointed out to you what was
whether I
going on.
bounced quite a few checks. Well, thankfully the lady at the counter was very, very helpful and looked at me and said, "Ma'am, I think well, back then I was still a miss. Miss, I don't think you meant to write it for this amount." And I'm like, "Why?" And she's like, "Well, it's so and so." And I'm like, "No, it's not. It's 1 point." And she's like, "No, it's not a point." I'm like, "Yeah, it is." And she's like, "No, it's a comma." I'm like, "Yeah, but it's a point." And so the discussion went back and forth and back and forth. And those discussions are actually, just like the article mentions, the article goes a little into language, right? And the differences in how we view things, especially with masculinity and femininity and objects, right? And so, which is similarly, it touches a lot of things when you look at things and when you interact with things, right? It's not just the comma. I mean, it's 3 years it took me to convert from the date, the month before the day in the year.
Yeah, see, because that's just wrong. I'll just point that out now.
Wrong.
You just
Of
shouldn't do it.
course it's wrong. Barry, you and I, we know it's wrong. Okay.
Look, here's the thing.
Just-
Here's the thing. I've actually started implementing changes after reading this article, and because of this, right? So, like, in our Patreon and our news roundups that we do every week, short plug for that, but we used to put the date in the correct US format, right? And then since reading this article and waking up a little bit, no, not really, but like, I've always been aware of this standardized way of presenting the information. I just didn't, it's not in my conscious, because that's not who I'm designing for. And so I've reformatted the way that we do them to be date and then 3-letter month and then full year. So that way it's
There you
easily
go.
understood. And that's an international standard of representing date. So that way it doesn't get confused when you have, just 6 numbers versus 2 numbers, 3 letters, and 4 numbers at the end. So I don't know.
And
It's
that's
another example.
and that's how I signed all my contracts. So it was 10 years ago. I mean, I tried, and I tried that way, and it was never going to go anywhere. So I knew like this is pointless. It's a moot point. And so I started doing I do the number, then I do dash, and then I do the 3-letter month, and then I do the year, but I do the full year, not just the 2
Mhm.
endings, the full year. And I also, if it's the 4th or the 1st or whatever, I do 0, 1, right?
Mhm.
So I do the whole gambit, right? And I used to get teased so much for that. Like, oh, you Europeans. And I was like, that's not European. That's actually international standard because you guys write it different. So we try to accommodate in a sense of having the international sense way so we can all understand the dates, right? And so it's a very those are small things, but they impact your life. I mean, think about this. And then, me always, of course, bringing it back to the medical environment. Think about that impact. Writing a date wrong when it comes to medication, writing the volume of a drug wrong when it comes to the point and the decimal. All these little things that we culturally just do differently,
Mhm.
and then implementing them in your day-to-day life. Now throw technology and that added complexity of, well, technology always leaves doors open for human error, right? um then you almost have a little fire going, like a little tiny flame going, and then you throw one wrong thing on it and it's boom. And so I think about all the things when I was in school, and we talked about all the major catastrophes, right? When we went human, I had a class that was in regards to safety, obviously, but um, human factors, and we read some really cool books. I had a really cool professor, um, and he always chose just the coolest books, and we would discuss the coolest cases. And I mean, but these are very commonly known. If you work in the field of human factors, everybody knows 3 Mile Island, right? Everybody knows the Swiss cheese, the reasons model, right? Like how a couple of events lead to catastrophe. Like we all know these things, but then to see them in actual use cases, actual existing events, right? Things that actually happen, and you walk through them step by step. There are so many that are influenced by cultural differences, perceptional differences, right? Just language, interpretation, authority, societal norms, respect, right? Um, who's allowed to speak up, who isn't allowed to speak up, what is interpreted on the screen if it's on this side versus whether it's on the left or on the right, right? Where do you start to look? I mean, thinking about, I'm Iranian, and think about how we read the other way, right? So, what do you put? Where's the most important piece of information in your screen if you have one culture looking from this side to this side and the other culture from that side to that side, right? Do you start in the middle always? So there's a lot of things where, yeah, of course, social media, and there's things like how we tend to look at things masculine or feminine when it comes to objects, and we interpret little logos and icons differently and stuff like that. But then there's the huge impact, and that is things that can actually affect people's lives, imminent danger events, right? So I think for it being such a huge part of design and such a huge part of our lives, it is such a little topic in most conversations. And I think that's what you kind of meant, Barry, right? With the fact that we don't, for it being such a magnitude of pot stirring,
Yeah.
right? Possibilities, we don't talk about it enough.
Well, I find it really interesting because you tend to design for the group you're designing for, right? So if I'm designing mostly for the military, then I've got my military cohort. It is Western, it is UK mostly, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I've got no need to think about true translation to other cultures or take other cultures into account. But this was brought into sharp realization for me. Probably, I think it was about 6 years ago. I did a project looking at social media and how culture comes across through social media and how culture comes through technologies. And I think this is worth just bringing in some of Hofstede's work. And what this, just as a really quick canter through it, the Hofstede work basically looked at all the different countries around the world and grouped them into 6 main areas. Which I think is interesting and something we could probably talk about in depth, but probably on another time. But there was 6 main scores that they've come up with for each country, and basically they've categorized each country as to on the firstly on the masculine feminine scale. So is it a more of a masculine country or more of a feminine country? You know, are the residents more affinity have more affinity that way? What's their long-term outlook? Are they looking for big wins tomorrow, or are they looking for big wins in 30, 60, 90 years' time? How individualistic do they feel? Do they talk about themselves, or do they talk about a group? You know, themselves as a. Do they believe the country first or themselves first? Their restraint. How contained are they? Are they going to be fit to outbursts, or are they going to be sitting there simmering quietly in the background without letting that go? What's their risk appetite, i.e. their uncertainty? Are they willing to take risks, or do they just not like any uncertainty and they want to know what's going to go on, basically risk averse? And what is what they call the power distance, which is, how close are they to the people running the country? From your general populace. Is there a huge convoluted hierarchy, or are you sort of 1, 2, 3 steps removed? And they found that each country has its own unique makeup of these 6 measures, and you can actually map them, and then you can then use that to get a fairly decent understanding as a starting point of what type of culture you're dealing with. If you then want to take a product and launch it into that country, and you can, the biggest realization for me was if you're wanting to get a message across in the Western world, we tend to be quite blunt and abrasive. If you want to get a message across, you put everything in the message. If you want to sell blue bananas on the corner of the street, you'll say, I'm selling blue bananas on the corner of the street. Whereas in Eastern culture, you will go more around the houses. You don't want to be so rude as to tell somebody exactly what it is that you want to tell them. You will go around, you will describe around the message of what it is that you're trying to do, and use more generalistic language to get to the point, because otherwise it would just be rude. And therefore, if you are more, that's why I think they see Westerners generally as quite brash and abrasive. And we sort of perceive the Eastern cultures as much more honoring people and very around ceremonial and things like that. So I think that is, it's not the be all and end all. There are issues and discussions to be had around the Hofstede's work, but I think it's a really good. The books are a really good read to give you an understanding of, for me, for taking a product and how to globalize it. Because if you start looking at this sort of thing and then start trying to apply some of that stuff, it's really useful.
I got a question for you guys, and this is along the same lines of thinking about designing for cultural diversity. Can a lack of thinking about cultural diversity result in discrimination or exclusion? Why or why not? I'm of the opinion that it can, but I want to hear your opinions on this.
I mean, if we're gonna go there, I wasn't sure if we wanted to go there, but what about the my old friend, right? Facial recognition. What about the fact that that software it doesn't have the capability to actually make the fine nuances in people with darker skins, right? So a lot of misidentification with that software, right? A lot of um, false, like if that goes out, false arrests, false accusations, false whatever, imprisonment, people being punished, people possibly being murdered for it, right? Where we go, like the sheer fact that we are 2023 and we have a software where people literally did not think about that factor is, first of all, for me, mind-boggling. Second of all, well, let's just say it how it is. How can that happen? How can that literally still happen? We are so aware of that cultural, these cultural differences, and that we all, not just cultural, but that we all have different, possibly skin colors, different sizes of eyes, different heights, different face structures, right? Depending on how is that still happening? And the fact that I say it as a humankind, we did not take that into account when making such dangerous softwares, technology tools that we're going to use to target people with. That is very troublesome to me. Very, very troublesome to me. And I think that kind of alludes to the same thing with a pulse oximeter, right? Like, how were those designed not taking into account darker skin tones? Or not
Okay.
even darker skin tones, but different skin tones, right? So that alone, that is a conversation in itself. But the fact that these guidelines or these norms and designing things, like that, we don't have something where you go to and say, okay, these are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps, right? Whatever, and we go through the gamut, right? That isn't done because it is still, it is a topic that is not often commonly discussed, because it's like, Nick, was it you that said kind of like, duh, like, of course we think about these things. So it's kind of almost assumed. So I care to venture the question here. Is it because we think we already thought about it that we don't bring it up? Is that another perceptual issue that we have with this? That we think somebody, of course, must have thought of this because duh, right? But then it didn't happen. So
Could be. I do want to jump in though, because I'm noticing a tendency. I'm not calling either of you out, but you've both done it tonight. That there's a tendency to conflate culture and skin tone, and that is something that I think I just want to point out the author of this article. I just did a couple searches for key terms. Not once do they mention race. Not once do they mention racial, skin, color. None of these things are mentioned in the article, and I think that was absolutely intentional. I just want to be clear that when we're talking about culture, we are talking about sort of the beliefs that somebody holds, not necessarily the color of their skin. Yes, it can correlate. It can match up depending on geographic region. But I do want to mention that, in the oximeter example, that's a skin color, that's a racial bias type of thing. And in the facial recognition, there's absolutely algorithmic bias towards those of darker skin tones. So I do want to bring that up. I want to call you both out on that.
I got to interject there though, because isn't it cultural in some cultures to not think of that group?
I know. I was going to.
So I would care to say, okay, maybe in this article, correct, it's not in there, but isn't it cultural and a cultural thing in some cultures to not think about certain groups? So
yes, no,
yeah,
that's absolutely true. Yes.
Maybe it is conflated, but that is a part of it. So
No, and I would back it up as well, because I think there was another example I was going to use, which is slightly more nuanced. Well, it isn't more nuanced. It's exactly the same thing, but a different way. In the fact that, we in a Western culture, we are generally focused around the middle-aged white male, and that is, even though we don't like it, thoroughly brought into the culture. Which is why when the oximeter issue came up during COVID, I thought it was really interesting, because we test on middle-aged white males. The other way that's happened as well is with Viagra. Viagra is actually more beneficial for women, and on a whole range of things. But it is only sold as a male performance enhancing drug, because that's who they tested it on, and they saw the reactions to, and that is purely based in Western culture. But you are right in some respects, and that's why I was quite keen to bring out this idea of Hofstede and what we do. The going back to the original question that prompted what you said, I think for me it boils down to target audience and understanding who it is you're designing for. Because, and this is why I made the comment about globalization at the top, because if you are designing literally for within your cultural sphere, the example that Heidi gave around, the way we read text, you either read left to right, right to left, or top to bottom, and then you do that. So we would design an interface primarily based for our home market, and you do it left to right, right to left, top to bottom, and you'd put your messaging in appropriately to deal with that. It is then the transition. If you then decide to move your target market somewhere else, how you deal with that transition. Now, you could just turn around and say, well, we've designed it. It's been super successful here in the West. We'll go and launch it in a Middle Eastern country or an Eastern country with no change. And the product will more than likely fail. Because you haven't done, all you'll have done is some sort of language translation. I don't know, maybe run it through some AI to do some change, but you won't have done the same level of design work that we would have done for how I was in the Western culture, where we've done everything left to right centric, top to bottom centric, and put all your important messages where we would know what they've done. All you've done is change the wording. You wouldn't have done that redesign route, because we don't have, even when we sort of say we do, we don't have a great appreciation for how other cultures deal with their interfaces.
And
Yeah.
it's oh,
I just
sorry.
want to jump in. Let's just do one more round, because we're almost at time. I'd love to sit and have like a 2-3 hour conversation about this, because I think it's really important. What we're here for is just opening up that can of worms for the community. So we'll just leave it there. Heidi, let's do one more round. So give me kind of your final thoughts. You can finish your thought and then do final thoughts, and then Barry, and then we'll wrap it up here and get into the next section.
Yeah, I mean, it's to pick up where Barry left off with globalization and switching products from market to market, right? He's absolutely on the money. That's why products fail, right? This isn't just consumer products. This is medical products, right? I worked on a project for over a year trying to adjust the design of a very simple, straightforward medical product, just to fit the American culture, because it was first introduced in the European market. But guess what? Healthcare and cultural differences work there different, and the user was using it in a different setting and in a different context. So it was never gonna win. It was never gonna win. So those are very impactful. Globalization touches it. But I think, as far as my final thoughts go, I think maybe we also worked in silos for a very, very long time, right? Because we were restricted to different geolocations, different targets, different target groups, right? And as globalization moves on, I think we have to more and more take into consideration that products aren't necessarily going to have a version for the European market, a version for the Asian market, a version for the American market, right? So we more and more need to kind of reel ourselves back and really look at all the nuances. And I think it is our responsibility as the people, as the experts in the field. I think it is our responsibility to bring that up in every design talk, in every concept phase, in every brainstorming, right? It is us that are ultimately guiding this process. However, I will say it's probably going to come down to the person who's most aware at the table, because I think, honestly, when I think about your comment, Nick, and I'm going to bring it up again, but it is really one of those things where you go, duh, Of course we're going to think about it, and somebody must have thought about it. So I think it's going to be our responsibility to kind of go like, duh, did somebody actually do the duh? Like, did somebody really think about this? And if not, let's tackle this, right? And I'm going to say right now also, I think we also need to come to terms with and make peace with that some products cannot be marketed to an entire world. They need differences in each country, location, culture, or whatnot. There's certain products that are too dangerous to interact with without having the very specific cultural differences in it. And just as a last example, it already starts at yellow, green, red, right? Red means stop, yellow means wait, green means go. That is not the case for everybody. So I think that's where I would leave it as a final thought. Yeah, we froze.
Yeah, Barry.
No, sorry.
Barry?
Yeah, I think my final thought is
Sorry,
yes, it's
Barry.
yeah, no, for me, it's something that we should be doing. I think we need to be aware of when we should and shouldn't be doing it, because there are different types of culture that we need to be thinking about. But I think it's also something you can potentially go over the top with as well. If it's not, this is why I keep on going back to understanding the scope of what it is that you're trying to do, your target audience. If you're focusing on a specific target audience and that's not going to change, then actually you get a bit of a free pass at that point. But just because we're not talking about geographic cultures doesn't mean we don't necessarily have to understand other cultures.
Yeah. For me, my final, I guess, points would be to bring up some of the risks of oversimplifying cultures, because there can be sort of this train of thought to not necessarily design for each individual culture, but to design for universal use. And doing that, you might actually come out with design that's not truly inclusive and not culturally sensitive in a lot of ways, right? But I also want to point out that this article, the role of culture in shaping human behavior, isn't necessarily as straightforward as the article might suggest. There are plenty of other factors going on here. Upbringing, Heidi, you brought up personal experiences, individual differences that can impact our behavior. And so that's also something that we have to think about when we're designing for some of these things. And then also, the last piece that I'll mention here is that cultures change over time. I don't know if this article is necessarily keeping that in mind as we start to think about how to design for a culture, because you brought up that framework, Barry, and I think we should take sort of a litmus test, or that's not the right word, a benchmark every couple years to kind of see how a culture is changing over time, and then start to design for that culture and make those changes appropriately. It's a big monumental task, but that's why Human Factors is here. So that's that's where I'll leave it. Thank you to our patrons and everyone for voting on the story this week. And thank you to our friends over at UX Collective for our news story. If you want to follow along, we do post links to the original articles and our weekly roundups in our blog. You can also join us on our Discord for more discussion on these stories and much more. We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back to see what's going on in the Human Factors community right after this.
Human Factors Cast brings you the best in human factors news, interviews, conference coverage, and overall fun conversations into each and every episode we produce. But we can't do it without you. The Human Factors Cast network is 100% listener supported. All the funds that go into running the show come from our listeners. Our patrons are our priority, and we want to ensure we're giving back to you for supporting us. Pledges start at just $1 per month and include rewards like access to our weekly Q&As with the hosts, personalized professional reviews, and Human Factors Minute, a Patreon-only weekly podcast where the hosts break down unique, obscure, and interesting human factors topics in just 1 minute. Patreon rewards are always evolving, so stop by patreon.com/humanfactorscast to see what support level may be right for you. Thank you, and remember, it depends.
Yes, huge thank you, as always, to our patrons. We especially want to thank our Human Factors Cast All Access patron, Michelle Tripp. Patrons like you truly keep the lights on and the lab going behind the scenes. All your patronage really helps us go. And speaking of Patreon, we usually have the patrons choose the news, but everyone can now choose the news. We had polls up on all our sites, but now we're kind of centralizing everybody to Patreon. If you go to Patreon, whether you're a member or not, we post up the polls. You can select the news story for the week. Of course, we weight our patrons with a little bit more weight there because they support us financially and they determine the direction of the show. But everyone can go and vote on which stories you want us to talk about. In fact, we got some great ones coming up next week. And I, of course, don't have them up in front of me because that would just make too much sense for me to do. Right. So go take a look, see what we have up on our on our Patreon for our poll. Go vote on it and have a little bit of say in what comes out on the show. All right, with that, let's get into this next part of the show we like to call
It came from.
You would think with all this prep that I would actually put that in there. Anyway, all right, this this is the part of the show where we search all over the internet to bring you topics the community is talking about. If you find any of these answers useful, give us a like or a thumbs up or whatever it is, no matter where you're watching or listening. That really helps other people find this content. All right, we got 3 up tonight. This first one's from the UX Research subreddit. I say, how do you get over the humiliation of a bad research interview? They go, I'm a senior service designer and have conducted hundreds of interviews in the past. Generally speaking, my interviews go pretty well. I tend to get the results I want from them, but this time around, everything went wrong. I didn't properly set the context, objectives, didn't build rapport, just bombed it entirely. I felt so awful, like I should know better, and all these were rookie mistakes. Guess my question is, how do you get over it? I still can't sleep thinking about it. I want to reach out to a participant and apologize, but I know this could make it worse. I think I'm just spiraling here. Barry, what is your experience with this? Have you ever had one of these experiences?
No, I've never had one. I think I've had plenty. I think it's one of these things that, it's a day at the office, isn't it? And some days are just better than others. So the first thing I'll be sort of looking at saying, right, if the interview normally goes well, and they've stated they're normally pretty good at what they do, something must have happened to make this go badly. It could have been something personal. It could have been something around the room. It could have been something about the person they're interviewing, and they just didn't. He or she just couldn't get that sort of chemistry. Something just didn't gel right. Just as if you can work out what that was, then that will help you acknowledge that and move on. But I think that's the most important bit, is that you just need to move on from it. Bad days in the office happen, and this is just one of them things of a bad day. The only thing I would say about your data, though, is if you've still included that in your data set or your findings, you need to record that you had that bad experience whilst developing that data. Otherwise, it'll skew what you're doing. You might feel there's still lessons there to incorporate, and that's fine. But just make sure you make that as your record. But yeah, it's a day in the office. Move on. Nick, what do you think? Sorry, Heidi. Heidi, what do you think?
Didn't matter. So I actually am kind of same along the lines. I would like to throw out there. Let's do a little therapy session here. Something that I learned that is the most helpful thing I ever learned is 9 out of 10 times this person is not thinking about it anymore. It's you thinking about it. This person probably hasn't thought about it for one more second since they walked out of that door. They probably thought, oh, weird, and then moved on, right? So your thoughts consuming you is about your perception of failure, which clearly indicates that you feel that you made a mistake. So this is about you thinking you made a mistake. This is not about that person. That person is probably almost, I'm going to go ahead, 99.99 is not concerned about this anymore. So I would wipe that off my shoulder first, so you can stop feeling guilty about that. Second, I would go through it step by step. Why did this happen? Do it as an expert. You are the researcher. Why did this happen? Find the root cause. And if you can sort it back to you just weren't prepared and things got out of hand that day, we're human. Move on. it happens, right? Lastly, I just recently had an experience that was a brand new one I had never thought I would ever have, because you can't make that stuff up. Seriously, you can't make it up. Um, and it wasn't me being unprepared, it was worlds colliding. Things happen. This participant came in, shouldn't have been there. They were not in the mental state they were there. They had some personal matters that happened that they spurted out during the session, but unfortunately, too late. We were 45 minutes into a 60-minute session, and all of a sudden, the person spurted out that things had happened, got up, and said sorry and left. And we sat there baffled, not knowing what happened. The person started almost tearing up as if we had done something, but we had to trace it back, right? Yeah, you're in shock the first minute, first 5 minutes, maybe the first 5 days. And then you realize you go step by step through what happened. And when you realize that some things cannot be controlled, you can let go of it. And one last thing, this is right now. The next study, this will be away. You will sleep this away with the next study. It'll be gone in about a month, depending on how many studies you do a month. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think the most important thing here is to kind of take a look at the lessons that you can learn from this, apply it. It's the same kind of reflective steps. Maybe talk with a colleague, see if they have any other thoughts, opinions on it. But really, the key thing here is to reframe it and don't think of it as an opportunity lost. Think of it as an opportunity gained. What can you change in your processes or procedures that will make sure that this doesn't happen next time, or that you can relay that to somebody else? I think that's an important skill, is to not necessarily look at it as a bad thing, but as an opportunity. And then, just in terms of the last point here, if you want to reach out to your participant, yes, that can make it worse, but only reach out to them if you truly think it'll add value to the situation and won't necessarily harm the relationship that you have with them. I think those are the important things. All right, let's get into this next one here. This one is by on the UX research subreddit alt contextual inquiry. Is there alternative ways of doing contextual inquiry instead of doing it the traditional interview like way? That's it. Barry, what's what's the answer to this question?
Yes.
Yes.
So
No.
I think it's I mean, we do it all the time within human factors. We tailor our methods in order to suit what it is what you're doing. Fundamentally, for me, it's about understanding, what is it you're trying to get, and does what you're doing pass the sniff test? As in, does it smell right to you that you're actually still keeping true to the methodology? You just adapted it just to suit your means. Heidi, what do you think?
Well, I'm gonna be super conservative on this one. I'm gonna say no, unless you have a video set up and you can actually watch the video back. This person has a video diary of doing it, whatever it is, and you can formulate your questions to that, because that's what contextual inquiry is all about: observing something and then modeling your questions to get to the point of what they're doing, to go deeper. So if you can do that, great. If not, then do a different method. Like pick something else, but don't try to make contextual inquiry something that it isn't. There's so many other things you could be doing.
For me, this is it depends. And really, I am maybe alone in my thinking here, but I tend to think of methodology as parts and pieces that we use to address any given situation. And it's okay to adapt for a specific project on hand, given that we're all scientists here. This is some form of experimentation. It may or may not work, and it depends on a lot of factors, like the type of regulations that you might need to go to. Heidi, for you in the medical world, you might need to have those rigid guidelines around methodology. But for somebody else, it might be, okay, well, we can throw in this component to it. We can do a survey here and there, or get modify this thing to get the desired information that we need. And ultimately, that's the thing that's most important, is what's going to get you the information that you need to be able to perform some of those, or to be able to make some of those actionable recommendations. So I'm an okay to modify. That's where I stand on that. All right, we got one more here. This is this is on the user experience
I just got
subreddit.
live feedback and said, no, it's not a method. Pick a different method. I literally just got an IM for that.
All right, we got another one here. This one is from user experience subreddit. Should I use ChatGPT during a whiteboarding exercise to help with ideation? The context here is that they're interviewing for a senior product designer role. What are your thoughts? Would you look down on this? Barry.
Oh, I love it. Controversial opinion, but yeah, if you're explaining about why you're doing it, what value it brings, and why you think it's a good idea, then I'd be very keen to see it, because I've started to use ChatGPT now in a, experimenting in different ways. Having it there, and I've done it this week, using it there as a different head in the room as we were ideating over some stuff literally on our whiteboards, using it to bounce some of the ideas off and get a different perspective. We had 3 of us in the room, and so that gave us the equivalent of almost like another 3 heads, because all 3 of us were using it to sort of throw prompts into, and share the outcomes. That was quite cool. And then I guess as extending that example, I used it a couple of weeks ago as to give me a user in the room. So I asked ChatGPT to be a pilot, and to give me a pilot's perspective of usability issues within a cockpit. And I did this because I wanted to see whether it could do it, and I knew the answers. So it was a bit of almost a control scenario. And you know what? He came out with some really good stuff. Came out with all the stuff that I would expect it to come out with, and stuff I found. It also gave me some things that I hadn't necessarily thought about before as well. That was a point I was like, that's interesting. It also gave me some stuff that I was like, no, that's not an issue for this particular instantiation. That's fine. But I could then go back and question it further on the one things like situational awareness and things like that. And that was really interesting. So I wouldn't necessarily use the answers it gave me, but it allowed me to test an interview structure. It allowed me to test almost like how I would interrogate a participant in for this sort of stuff. So yeah, I'm quite a fan. So if you were to bring that to me for an interview, I will give you kudos and respect, as long as you could justify why. Heidi, what do you think? Would you let them get away with it?
It depends. Well, Nick and I, we were looking up something the other day with respect to human factors, and I asked Nick to ask ChatGPT to literally put together a human factors plan for a medical product validation study. And while it was right on the money, it also showed me that it is only as smart as we make it, right? So the link between the interpretation of the step-by-step instructions, which were right on the money, but the interpretation and the skill to make that realize that and call it into existence by actually executing the activity is still a human thing. So while at first I had to hold my breath and I clutched my pearls and I wasn't sure if I was going to have a job in the next 2 years, when it then spit out most of it and was done, I realized, yeah, but you still need somebody to execute it, right? So at the end of the day, yeah, even if it is linked live to the internet and it can gather all the information from everywhere that ever existed, at the end of the day, you still need the person to make the human cognitive ability come to light by connecting the dots, right? So I would feel very conflicted, because I would feel like the person put no thought into it. And speaking of cultural differences, I come from a culture where I would appreciate your 2 cents. And if I gave you a task, I didn't give ChatGPT a task. So.
Oh boy. So we got a yes, we got an emphatic maybe, and I'm sitting over here saying no. So it's a complete mixed bag. So I think, look, using ChatGPT during a whiteboarding exercise, during an interview, it could be bad news. Just depending on what comes back. If you're unfamiliar with the domain and don't know what types of things it's bringing you back, it's not connected to the internet as of right now. It's only got data from 2021, so it could be complete BS that it's bringing back, and it also could make a bad impression on the interview. Right? I think it's okay to say, if I'm familiar with the domain, I'd actually bring up ChatGPT and ask it a couple things right here. But in this exercise, I'm going to do my best to do it myself. That's a happy medium for me, where I'd say, okay, yes, they're utilizing the tool and they're telling me that they would utilize that tool. But, for the purposes of a whiteboard meeting, a whiteboard interview, I think I want to see how you think rather than how you use a tool to influence your decisions. Like, I want to know what I'm working with at a baseline before I get any additional tools into the mix. I don't know. The preview, the purpose of the exercise is to really assess your ability to come up with ideas on your own and showcase your problem solving skills. So, and you might argue that ChatGPT is a problem solving tool, but again, like I'm looking at a baseline here. I do want to kind of follow up on just a couple things though, since everyone's talking about ChatGPT, things that worked for them. In terms of using this in an operational environment, we could do this to populate personas. That's actually something that I thought about the other day and am trying and having some relative success with. It's just kind of a baseline. It grabs the averages of everything, and so it's a good baseline. Piloting surveys, ask it to critique some of your work. What, here's my goal. What here's the questions that I'm asking to get to that goal. You have any feedback? And then asking for generic feedback, critiquing, like it'll sometimes bring up some things that you didn't think about, and then just general copywriting. All right, that's it for where it came from. Let's just get into this last part of the show we like to call One More Thing. There's no introduction here. So, Heidi, I understand that you are really fired up about something.
Netflix. Have you heard the news
Oh,
yet?
yes, I have. Yes,
I
have.
haven't. So enlighten me.
Tracking us with our geolocation to determine whether the main user is using it or somebody else is signing on, in order to avoid password sharing. And they apparently, so all these questions came up on the internet. So, in case people have not heard about it yet, Netflix is, in case you're living under a rock, Netflix has been trying to stop password sharing. So they now rolled out in 3 other countries. They rolled out their new model where they are basically allowing 4 people, not 4 people, 4 devices on the same Wi-Fi connection at your home, designated home location, to be signed on at the same time. However, when you then move outside of that location, you have to be verified by the home user. But you're only allowed to use it for 7 days without having to re-verify, and you can only use it 30 days outside of your home. So this poses the question of, Netflix was supposed to be, from the get-go, it was supposed to not tie you down to a specific location, because it was supposed to be this thing that you can watch anytime, anywhere. How did they call those little things, like comedy snippets that you can watch on the go on your commute to work and whatnot? And now, because their stock is tanking or whatever, and they're losing subscribers, they're getting greedy, like everybody, more greedy, and they want to have more money. And so now they want you to basically stop doing that and only use it in a certain location. And, look, listen, corporate greed, we're never going to stop that. Capitalism, we're never going to stop that. It's always going to be around. My issue with it is, so where's my privacy? Where's my privacy? Now, Netflix is going to know where I am. Netflix is going to know where my home location is. Netflix is going to know where I go on my 5-minute break. Netflix is going to track me around the world while I vacation in other places and determine whether I'm allowed to sign on to my own account that I pay for with my own money and my own subscription. So yeah, I'll wrap it up here and say, yeah, unsubscribe.
I mean,
I'm out.
It'll make them money.
If they're
It'll make
doing
'em
that.
money. Barry, what's your one more thing? Let's change the subject here.
So this week I went to a conference, in-person conference around looking at local government and how does local government perform, particularly in this one, really around net zero and things like that. But fundamentally, it was looking around the operation of local government and how it's evolved. And I went with my CIHF hat on, and really, I'm really interested around how human factors can get more integrated and involved in local government and government as a whole, and see if we can add better value. And so I really sat with this entire day and just realized, and it was almost a crashing realization, even though I've been involved with local government myself, was there's loads of issues, there's loads of problems in local government, from healthcare, social care, all these sort of things. But none of them are truly technical problems. We cite technical issues and all this sort of stuff. They're all about human relationships and all the risks that are there, all of the inability for our local government system to match up with our social care system, to not be able to match up with our NHS system, is because they say they're three very different organizations. Well, okay, that's all down to leadership. And if you have enough leadership to turn around and say, right, you will talk to this organization, and the three of you will get in a room and sort it out until you are all sorted out. It was just really strong that actually there is a lot of value there that the human factors can provide, not just at the design level, but actually looking at the organizational level and all the other factors that we do. So it was really good, because actually it meant that the premise of the stuff I'm going to be trying to do over the next 12 months, actually I think I was right. But it was just a smashing realization that I should have realized before. So, but it was good. It made my very, very long day that I had to be up at 4 o'clock in the morning for worthwhile. Nick, what about you?
Oh man, if any of you out there listening are a parent and have had to go through the stress of preschool, is just okay. So let me just break this down for you. So my son is at the age now, he's going to be in preschool here at the end of the year, or in the fall, I guess. And so there's like this huge lead time that we have to think about, right? So we're 8 months removed from fall, or 7 months, I guess. So that's a huge lead time that we have to think about. It's highly competitive, and it's just like we found a preschool that we really like. We like the instructors, we like, the classroom setting, we like everything about it. And my wife went out this morning to go and get us basically make a deposit and say, we want this class. Get our son in this class for 5 days a week. And we got in. There's and because we were thinking about all the what ifs, and okay, if we don't get into here, how do we approach? And so my wife and I kind of agreed, we're not going to put any mental energy into the what ifs, or how to approach something, and the alternative, I guess, until we know that it's not for sure. And now we know for sure that he's in, and it's just I'm super thankful. It's a hugely stressful process because it's competitive, and anyway, y'all have my sympathies if you're parents out there. That's it for today, everyone. If you like this episode and enjoy some of the discussion, and maybe want to hear a real world example about how cultural considerations can impact tech, I'll encourage you to go listen to episode 263, where Heidi and I were on talking to dead people, and how some cultural reservations might be had about that type of thing. Comment wherever you're listening with what you think of the story this week. For more in-depth discussion, you can always join us on our Discord community. Visit our official website, sign up for our newsletter, stay up to date with all the latest Human Factors news. You like what you hear, you want to support the show, there's 3 things that you can do. One of them you can do right now. Stop what you're doing, leave us a 5-star review. You can tell your friends about us. That's the second thing you can do. Let them know, hey, these people on this Human Factors podcast talked about culture for 40 minutes, and it was a pretty good discussion. Or 3, consider supporting us on Patreon if you have the money, financial means to do so. We would happily take your money to help put it back into the production of this show. No, I'm serious. I don't pocket any of it. I'm like thousands of dollars in debt because of this. Anyway, help me get out of debt. And as always, all of our socials, our website are in the description of this episode. I want to thank Heidi Mehrzad for being on the show today. Where can our listeners go and find you if they want to find out where they can share their HBO login information with you?
HBO?
Yeah, because they don't track the location.
Well, HBO isn't that great, so
Speak for
they
yourself.
can track me
Last
at HFUX Research on Twitter, on Instagram. You can also find us at HFUX Usability Labs or Labs on Twitter and Insta, and all kinds of other handles for all of our divisions. And if you have a direct question, find me on LinkedIn and DM me.
Barry Kirby, where can our listeners go and find you if they want to talk about, I don't know, government conferences?
Buy me a coffee. I'll meet you anywhere. If you want to come and reach out to me on social media, find me at Baz_K on Twitter or any of the other social media channels. If you want to listen to some interviews with interesting people around how they deal with human factors and their career paths, then you can find me at 1202 The Human Factors Podcast, which is at 1202podcast.com.
As for me, I've been your host, Nick Roome. You can find me on our Discord and across social media at Nick_Roome. Thanks again for tuning into Human Factors Cast. Until next time. It depends. We did it.
And we're out.
Good show, guys.
It's really hot in here.
Oh, I am.
That's you, Barry.
Well, thank you. That was fun. I enjoyed that.
That was good. Yeah, I didn't mean to get so combative in the middle there. Sorry.
Yes, you did. But both me and Heidi just slapped you right down. Don't you try and get.
Did you?
Did
you though?
I was like, no. I was like, no. You're not gonna call this out, especially not in this cultural. No.
I mean, apart from the fact you were right, that just doesn't get anywhere near it.
Well, that's all I needed was you saying that I was right on stream, because then I can take the post-show content and put it back in with that.
That's true. You can knock yourself out, and then we'll just call it out.
I loved how my text messages and DMs though lit up when it came to the contextual inquiries. Like, it's a method. Just pick a different method.
Yeah. Now, here's the thing, right? People are IMing you. Why are they not commenting publicly? Like, we want to see that stuff.
Yeah.
Don't call them out. I'm calling them out right now. I don't know who it is, but you should comment publicly, because then we could all see it and we could all comment on it.
What?
People are watching. People are watching you, and people are watching this right now, and they're reaching out to you directly instead of commenting publicly. Yeah.
Well, sometimes the convenience of text message is easier.
Oh, okay. All right.
So,
That's fair. That's fair. Okay, it was a text message. I thought it was like, someone was watching on LinkedIn and they just reached out to you, and
no, let's be nice. Let's be nice.
All right. Okay. We'll be nice to this person.
I think for me, with that, it's there is a point that you generally, if you're going to change something, it will probably end up being another method that we'll probably recognize, but don't get hung up on it, because in the grand scheme, I've sort of seen that. I've seen a similar thing done before, where actually they end up being it's a longitudinal study, and you're like, God, you don't need to do that. But as long as they're recognizing that they're getting what they want out of it, just because it's not exactly what we would call it, then I don't get myself too excited about it. As long as you're recognizing what you're doing and you're getting you're getting what you consider good science, then knock yourself out.
Yeah, I think
I'll leave now.
For me, it's just like call it what you want. Like, the methods have names to them, yes, but ultimately, what I'm thinking of are like bits and pieces of different methodologies to create a larger package of method that is going to address and get me the things that I need from a project. And so I don't tend to think of, and this might be ADHD brain, I don't tend to think of things as like these these confined, like when I can think of contextual inquiry, I think of, going out to somebody and seeing how they do a task in their natural environment. And what that to me means is that I could take different types of notes when I do that, or, I could do a survey alongside that. And yes, that methodology is technically a survey, a questionnaire, but pairing it with a contextual inquiry is, I just think of it as a contextual inquiry because I'm going out and doing something. I just, surveys are there, right? And so that's kind of where I'm coming from with my answer. It's just like one of those things where I think of them as parts, and you put them together as parts and pieces to make a grander plan. No.
But at the end of the day, I think we're just saying the same thing. We're just
Yeah.
all looking at it from the thing. At the end of the day, it's just a method. Like if it doesn't fit the framework of the method, just pick a different method or call it something else. You don't need to put a what is a square piece in a round whatever. You know what I mean?
That's fair. Yeah. That's true. It's I'll always remember
Make
being
it
called out.
fit.
I got called out once. This is gone a while ago. For using a methodology, and they turned. It was nobody had done any of this work before. It was groundbreaking stuff, and I chose a methodology, and one methodology was as good as another. There was no right answer, but this one person was adamant that what I'd chosen was wrong, and I was like, okay, that's fine. It's wrong. Tell me which one I should be using. Which one, in your opinion, should you be? Oh, well, I don't know. Right. Well, okay. Then that's unhelpful. Why can't you tell me which one? Because they were, they were a human factors practitioner as well. They were skilled in what they were doing. They're like, oh, I just wouldn't do it. Right. Well, that's truly not helpful then, because no data. That means you've definitely got no data. And they're like, oh, it's not been done before. And I was like, I know, because nobody's ever done this before. That's why we're trying to do it. And I chose one that was popular and well referenced, which is a slightly different argument, but I used a well-referenced method because of that reason, because nobody had done it before, so we could get some base data, and then you've got something to turn around and say in 6 months' time and say, actually, the method's wrong because of this data, or the method's right, whichever works, or I could tweak this method. But I was just astounded by this idea that, oh no, I just won't collect any data because it's never been done before. Therefore, I'm just not going to do it. I'm just like, that's how we never do that. But
That sounds like defeatist.
Yep. So,
look at that. We got a good job. Thanks, Julie.
Oh yeah, thank you, Julie.
Yay!
Appreciate the good job.
See, some people love us.
At least
I
somebody
actually
does.
know who that is.
Okay. So is Julie just saying that you've done a good job in trying to sort of shut us up, or have we all done a good job? I think I need a bit more detail.
She texted me a really cute message. Oh, I gotta share it with Barry, but I'm not gonna share it publicly.
This is going to go one of two ways.
I can't wait.
Oh. That's the third way. I said one of two ways. That was the third way. Okay. That's not a problem.
Oh. Anyway, yeah. Well, I think when it comes to stuff like that, you just honestly, Barry, that kind of story always still surprises me, because why are you a researcher if you can't be flexible? Like,
well, it is a bit of that. It was one of these episodes that I thought, when you sort of get to a certain point in your career and you think, I've seen it all. There's nothing truly that could shock me, and then yet something else comes along. And this was, I was in my slightly, believe it or not, I can be slightly arrogant and my slightly ego-driven. I know that's hard to believe.
what?
But this, I know, shocking.
You?
I know. So I took on this job and I was doing this thing, and then I think it was just one of these things. But they were adamant that I was doing absolutely the wrong thing, and I was just like, well. But then you start questioning yourself, because I'm like, well, should I not be gathering research? Should I not be gathering data because of this? Should we not try and move things forward? Am I just trying to do too much? Which could still be true. I don't think so. But yes, it was an interesting time. But I think that was the first time I'd met so much resistance within the community. I'm used to it, but we all are, trying to deliver HF in the bigger world is always a challenge, and part of the fun of being here most days. Though I had a big bust up this week. I was over. When you just get when you've got the children are overtired, and like, oh, you're just overtired, you need to go to sleep. That was me. I should have gone to bed. Instead, I joined the meeting. I shouldn't have joined the meeting. But
Oh.
yeah, I didn't disgrace myself. I was just a bit louder and demanding and belligerent and self-centered than I usually
Well, we
am.
all have our moments. I mean, come on, we're all human. I was reminded this week that professional courtesy and decency and niceties are not common. So I thought, we had moved on, and I thought we were pretty professional, but I was reminded this week again that some are not, and some still love to be whatever they want to be. So, yeah, but it's funny that you say that. Every time you think you've seen it all, it smacks you in the face and goes, wait a second, lady, you have not seen it all. Let me remind you of this instance. And I truly, during that study with a person today asking about the humiliation, in that study, I think I have never sat in a session so gobsmacked and just sat there and go, what just happened? Like, what did we do? What happened? It took me, I think, a half an hour to just understand, like, yes, this person just got up and walked out. Like, what did we say? What did we do? Did we hurt? What?
Yes.
Speaking of embarrassing, smacking in the face and reminding about something. Hey, here's this.
Why does it have to be over my face? just say.
Because if you put it over my face, it would have to be the female kind.
Yeah. Let's see here.
That's good.
They have a brand. It's called this one's the Fit Flex underwear for men, and they also have women's products. Fit Flex underwear for women is the counterpart.
I hope we're friends still in about 30 years, and I'll remind you of this and be like, so, how are they serving you?
Well, you know what? If they give us a sponsorship, it doesn't matter, because then we can just say, it depends at the end, and everybody will know it's just because, I mean, think about it. Just think about it.
Think about it.
They have to
Truly,
do usability
think
testing,
about
right?
it. I don't know that they do. Look at those pictures. Look at those pictures.
Yeah, they're not pretty, are they? It's so I guess it
that's more marketing than that's marketing. That's not usability testing.
Marketing, market research, user feedback.
Actually, I'm currently putting together a human factors report that has in its first theme marketing and branding. It's the first time I've done it in this way, but it's all because of the way that they're not situating the product. They're not giving it an identity. They're not thinking about it, and therefore they cannot express what they're trying to do to the people that they're trying to influence about taking it further. And so then part of that was helping trying to name the product. So that takes us right back to ChatGPT, and I was like, right, I've got a product that does this. Can you give me 20 examples of names, and then and 20 taglines to go along with it? Brilliant. Some of them are completely bat crazy, but some of them were sitting there going, actually, that's fairly close.
I got so excited. I shouldn't be. No, something like this shouldn't excite me this much, but I've been trying to get onto ChatGPT ever since Nick brought it up, and I couldn't get on because they had stopped allowing you to sign up.
Right.
And then the other day, for some reason, they allowed me to sign up. And I got in, and I got so excited, and I sat here, and I was like, oh my God. And I fed it everything that I've been waiting for to ask. And then, you can go down the rabbit hole pretty quick on that one, right? You just go. But then the other night, I completely forgotten ADHD. I forgotten that could get onto it. And I had to prep something for my contractor, and I had to put together like kind of like an intro, what like we do.
Yeah.
And I was like, let me ask ChatGPT, because I am not interested in regurgitating things that I've been saying for 20 years, right? Like, I'm tired, you know?
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
just asked it, and 2 paragraphs, perfect. I was like, copy, paste. And then I wrote, like, I took this stuff out, made it more personal, made it fit to us, right? Like, took all that. And I was like, this is genius. Thank you. Thank
It is,
you.
and that's where I think it's got stacks of value and I think I can see where educators and stuff are really concerned, the fact that they can't use their traditional methods for doing some of this stuff. I get that. And also I think you can, so I was evaluating somebody's work the other day, and you could see that they'd used, and I've been encouraging my team to use ChatGPT, but then to personalize it and use it, and they clearly have forgotten the second bit. And he's sitting there going, I couldn't read all of, I know exactly where you've got all of that from, because you can read it, you can tell.
I can tell Nick found something funny on ChatGPT right now.
Oh yeah,
probably
I've
asked a
created
bunch of
something
companies.
funny. Yes,
Okay.
and this was the idea that Barry, as soon as we started talking about ChatGPT and coming off of the Depend Underwear conversation, I was like, oh well, let's write them an email asking for a sponsorship. So it says, "Dear Depend Underwear team, I hope this email finds you well. My name is Nick Roome, and I'm the host of Human Factors Cast, a podcast that explores the intersection of psychology, sociology, technology, and our daily lives. Our show has a rapidly growing audience of individuals interested in understanding the human factors behind technology and its impact on society. We're reaching out to you today because we believe that our audience and the values of Depend Underwear would make a perfect match. At the end of each episode, we already end with the phrase, 'It depends,' which aligns perfectly with your brand message of offering individuals the confidence and comfort they need in their daily lives. We would be thrilled to work with the Depend Underwear to create a sponsored segment in each episode of our podcast. Our listeners trust our recommendations. We believe that they would be interested in hearing about the dependable and comfortable products offered by your brand. In return, we'd be happy to offer Depend Underwear exposure to our growing audience through verbal mentions, on-air advertising, and online promotions through our website and social media channels. We believe that this partnership would be a mutually beneficial one, and I look forward to discussing this opportunity with you further. Please let us know if you have any questions or if there is any additional information that you'd like to receive. Thank you for your time and consideration. We look forward to hearing from you." So there you go.
ChatGPT wrote that for you?
Yes.
So I've got a question.
How did it know? Yeah, please ask questions, because I have some.
How are you expecting us to show off this underwear? I just need to work out what we're getting into. there.
So here's the thing. In the middle of the show, we'll stand up. That's it.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine.
Pass.
A bit like this then. Yep.
Pass. Hard pass.
Vanessa, one of our patrons. I'm convinced Depend should make it happen. I think so, Vanessa. I agree.
Hard pass.
Okay, Heidi, what was your question? Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, how did it know? How did it know some things in that email? Did you feed it more than just one thing?
I said, I want you to act as a podcast host, in parentheses, Human Factors Cast, looking for a sponsorship from, quote, Depend, end quote, underwear brand. Please write a compelling email to their team asking for a sponsorship. Mention that we already end each episode with "It depends." So things it was.
There we go.
Yeah, things it was pulling from publicly, though, was the psychology, sociology, technology in our daily lives. That was publicly pulled. Everything from Depends was pulled. The It Depends. Yeah, that was.
So you fed it that you already end the show, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I was like, okay, now it's getting creepy.
Vanessa's asking if we're going to send an age demographic.
Okay, hang on. I should ask it to rewrite it. Given, hang on. Let me just ask it. What target demographic would the Depends underwear brand?
Probably won't know the brand, will it?
We really on ChatGPT asking about depends. This is really happening.
Well, this is what live streaming is all about. It's
This is look. This is the post show. We've already done the good stuff, right? We packaged all of our good stuff into that hour in the middle. That's what we do, and now we're down rabbit holes, and we're just going off. Yes, target demographic for Depend underwear is likely adults who have incontinence needs or are seeking products for light to moderate bladder protection. This demographic may include individuals who are elderly, pregnant, disabled, or experiencing medical conditions that cause incontinence. Additionally, the brand may also appeal to individuals who want extra protection during physical activities or overnight use. So I think that largely aligns with our demographic of, well, I just described it. So we know our target demographic.
totes.
Hang on. You know what? I'm curious though. What I'm going to do is I'm going to grab some of our demographic information that we have. I'm going to feed it in there and say like, hey, here's some of our demographic information. Maybe rewrite that thing and see how it differs. I'm curious. I'm going to try it. Let's see.
We don't have
get out of here. What's that?
We know how to have a good time.
We do know how to have a good time. All right, let's see here. Listen on operating system. All right. We don't have super demographics because it's a podcast. We don't get like that refined. We get like country of origin, how they're listening, operating system.
I set a question
I'd have to
out,
like,
and I think over the past 2 years, 3 people have filled it out.
yeah, I know. We have, by the way, if anyone, this was not part of the main show. Sorry, Vanessa. Disappoint. If you hear the music in the background, that's your cue. This is the post show.
Well, unless you're trying to drive us to say that this should be the main show, but
This should, okay, yeah. Well, if it is, then it's a very different podcast. No,
I sure hope we don't discuss Depends underwear on the main show.
I want to bring up a point that you brought up, Barry, and then we'll get out of here.
Okay.
Yes, we do have a feedback form in the description of this episode. If you have feedback about the show, if you think Barry's voice is great and want to let him know, if you think Heidi's a great guest and want her on more, let us know. There's a feedback form right in the bottom of this. That actually really helps us out with understanding what is good and what is not good. It'll guide you through all that. Just go do that. It'll be really nice. All right. Well, that's it for today.
Sounds like this will be my last time, Ben.
I don't think so. All right. Well, good night, everybody. We'll see you next week. Have a great one.
catch you later.
Human Factors Cast brings you the best in human factors news, interviews, conference coverage, and overall fun conversations into each and every episode we produce. But we can't do it without you. The Human Factors Cast Network is 100% listener supported. All the funds that go into running the show come from our listeners. Our patrons are our priority, and we want to ensure we're giving back to you for supporting us. Pledges start at just $1 per month and include rewards like access to our weekly Q&As with the hosts, personalized professional reviews, and Human Factors Minute, a Patreon-only weekly podcast where the hosts break down unique, obscure, and interesting human factors topics in just 1 minute. Patreon rewards are always evolving, so stop by patreon.com/humanfactorscast to see what support level may be right for you. Thank you, and remember, it depends.